Welcome to Building Bulletproof Backs, where we redefine the mainstream medical approach to healing stubborn back pain. Join physiotherapist and movement addict Marian McRae on a mission to end the back pain epidemic. Building Bulletproof Backs requires mental, physical, and emotional strategy. Hope is not enough. Listen now as she interviews real-life back pain sufferers who have found a way out of the nightmare and introduces you to leading-edge teachers with powerful tools that can change your life. You can do this. Your body knows how to heal. You just got to learn how to get out of its way. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hey listeners, welcome to episode 3. We've had a few technical issues getting started, but we are here now with Louisa Cruz. I've chosen Louisa to be on episode 3 because I think what's going to be best if I alternate a movement teacher with a back pain sufferer who's actually managed to find a way out of the mess and is now displaying a bulletproof back. So given that we started with a back pain sufferer and then episode 2 was a teacher, we're back now to a rare individual who has obviously displayed the skills required to heal their body, and they're here to share what they know. So Louisa, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Thanks, Marion. So I'm Louisa and I am a mother of 2. I have a 10-year-old boy and a 5-year-old boy. And I'm currently an absolute open water swimming addict. Before that, I was an absolute Ashtanga yoga addict. And the thing that changed me from one to the other was a back injury.
And would you just like to start with the story, Louisa? Just go back to how it all started for you.
So before having children, I started yoga when I was about 16 and practiced very diligently all the way through until 26, 27. When I was 28, I fell pregnant with my first child. And so before I fell pregnant, I had complete freedom in my body. I could bend it and twist it and do pretty much whatever I wanted with it and would have no repercussions. So then after the birth of my first child, I took a bit of a break from the intense Ashtanga practice and slowly tried to make my way back to it. Although I found that it wasn't really going particularly well and that I probably was pushing things beyond where I should have at that point in time. So when my son was 18 months old, I was preparing to do a yoga retreat with my teacher in Bali, and I was desperately trying to get back to the place that I was in before having children. And in hindsight, I realised that wasn't possible, that after having children, your body is very different. And in my case, it was a matter of my strength and flexibility had got a little bit out of whack. So before having children, I would say they were quite equal. After having children, my flexibility outweighed my strength. So I was practicing away as hard as I could, and I was in a forward bend, and I just felt something really weird go on and didn't really know what it was at the time. And then over the course of like a few days and a few months, it just seemed to get worse and worse. And then I started investigating what might have happened, and the most likely cause of that pain was a disc bulge.
Okay, so just let me interrupt for a sec. What warning signs did you have leading up to it?
So in hindsight, I was ridiculously exhausted. I wasn't getting enough sleep. but kind of wasn't paying much attention to those signals at that time. Physically, I could feel that my body was a lot looser, but from a yoga point of view, I was kind of getting into a few things more deeply than I would have before because I had that extra mobility in my body.
Mm. So the extra mobility felt safe?
Again, at the time, looking back, it probably wasn't. But again, at the time, it did feel fine.
And how long, let's say it was a grumbling along a little bit, how long did you keep pushing before the body said, we're done. We're not going to let this go any further?
It was probably a month to 6 weeks. So the back injury happened literally 2 weeks before I went to go to Bali and do a retreat with my teacher. So I went to Bali and I sort of got through the retreat, but kind of only just and not the way I'd hoped to. And then I got home from Bali and then I kind of realised that this wasn't going to work. My current mode of dealing with the problem, which was just keep going, it wasn't going to work anymore.
And so what is the yoga approach to being in an asana or a posture and experiencing pain in that posture? Because I've heard a few yogis sort of preach that we can push through pain and it's a mental block or an emotional block, and if you sit with it and go deeper into it, there's potential to release it. Is that the background you were coming from or not?
There is that attitude towards pain within yoga, and I think it's really hard to define what is the pain of transition or opening and what is the pain of perhaps something actually needs to be looked at. So, for example, when your muscles stretch and they lengthen, there is a certain degree of discomfort associated with that, or when a joint is learning to open in a new way, there's discomfort in that. But I think then when you're talking about kind of gritty, grinding pain, then that's probably the one to stay away from. And
it's funny you say that because, I can often have people and they're in a stretch. It's clearly a stretch, and they will label it pain, and then the vice versa of that. So our language with being able to articulate what we're feeling in our bodies is a little bit lacking for some people. Have you observed that as well?
Definitely. And I think people's view of pain and discomfort is quite different, or people's tolerance of it. Yeah. So for one person, you can give them what you would consider to be a very gentle stretch, but they may feel it and experience as it quite something significant, or vice versa. But I think even though I would say the pain that I had in my back was very gritty and something to stay away from, it was then something that led me to a massive transition in my life.
Yeah, so tell us about that, because that's the hang on, before we get to the happy ending, yeah. I want you to reflect back, and were there times you actually had zero hope that you would find a way out?
Yes, definitely. And I think a lot of that hope was to do with zero hope that I would be able to get back into my yoga practice, because at that point my yoga practice was absolutely key to my mental and physical well-being as well as my job. So I was a yoga teacher. So I think it wasn't so much the pain that was a problem. It was more what that pain then meant for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's a really good point, isn't it? So sometimes it's a really good point, actually. I've never considered that. It's not so much the pain we fear, but it's the re-identification of who we are in terms of potentially our chosen sport or our chosen career or our chosen hobby.
And the sense or the loss of control of one's own destiny in a way that, at that point my path had a significant change.
And so can you remember the moment when you actually made the decision, all right, yoga's not working for me right now? And did you think this would be a temporary withdrawal from yoga?
I think at the time I sensed that it was more than that, because at the time I was very, very sad, and grieved almost that loss of what I was. So I think I kind of somewhere in me knew that may come to a close at that point. And that I needed to start looking at other things that might give me a sense of well-being and health and physical freedom.
Beautiful. And so how did swimming drop in there? Or were there things you tried before swimming?
So alongside swimming, I started to do some Pilates as well. And I found that the Pilates was amazing in that it could very subtly start to strengthen all of those core muscles which had switched off due to the pain, without really loading my back up or without kind of moving in any sort of extreme or any direction. And then the swimming was just magic in terms of pain relief. At that stage, that was the only reason I was swimming, is because I enjoyed being in the water, and I didn't hurt when I was in the water, and I felt great for at least 3 hours when I got out of the water.
Magic. Isn't that lovely? And so naturally when you have a positive experience of a movement, you are drawn to keep going there.
Yeah. So I sort of continued to swim more from a therapeutic way for quite some time, and then fell pregnant with my second child. And then after he was born, I kind of felt like I'd like to get a little bit more serious about swimming. And by that point, my body was feeling pretty good and pretty strong. And I knew what not to do after having a baby, which is, really push your body to extremes. And so I started to just slowly do some swimming classes with Charlie at Swimming Women, and started to build up a little bit more technique, which really helped. And then from there, it just sort of grew and grew and grew to the point that, now I feel like I have the same freedom that I had in yoga, but I have it in the water.
Oh, gorgeous. And especially the outdoors water, hey, swimming up and down the bay and between islands. And so recently, what was your solo long swim? I think it was pretty incredible. How long was it in the end?
So I had trained for a year to swim the Port to Pub race, which was from Fremantle Beach to Rottnest Island, which unfortunately got cancelled. So I decided to try and complete the distance in Narrabut Bay. So I did 20 kilometres continuously,
Wow.
with a lot of help from a lot of amazing swimmers along the way who jumped in and swum with me. And it took me 6.5 hours.
Wow. Now think about this. Think about these ultra endurance events and the mental focus you need, and your ability to endure physical discomfort to allow you to keep going for that long. Are they skills you feel now in hindsight maybe you developed in your journey of healing your back?
Definitely. In the journey of healing it, and also I think a lot of those lessons were learnt through yoga as well.
Okay. Yeah, right. So maybe you had them before, and they were the tools, the mentor tools that allowed you to reframe your pain and perhaps start believing that you could heal, and then finding a pathway.
Yeah. And I think that's quite a strong philosophy of yoga practice, is that, that things come and they go, that things don't stay forever. That everything is in a state of flux and in a state of change. So, yeah, possibly it was those skills that I learned through practicing yoga that then helped me to get through a back injury, that then helped me to be able to, swim for a significantly long time without being concerned about the fact that, things start to hurt and then they don't hurt, and you want to stop, but then you just keep going.
Yeah, wow. It's do you think this is my, and I'll love your opinion on this. It almost seems like, I mean, we all know so many people stuck in back pain. They're everywhere, and 8 out of 10 of us at some stage in our life will experience pain. And transient back pain is one thing, but persistent, constant stubborn back pain that's been there for years and doesn't seem to shift, it really does take mental, physical, and emotional strategies. Do you think you could have done it without all three?
No, I think it's got to be a holistic approach.
And do you see currently that many people are offering that? I mean, you seem to be graced with, you had the mental skills, you had the emotional awareness through yoga, and you had movement awareness from yoga. So, we could argue that you were always going to be successful because you had those things before the injury. How do you think people go about learning those things after the injury from a place of being in physical pain, being emotionally distressed, losing hope? I mean, it's a big ask, isn't it, to ask people who are in it to start to develop these tools?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it can be very easy to fall into the trap of thinking this is just one thing, it's just my disc. Because more often than not, it is not just one thing. It's more than that, the disc's related to the hips, that's related to the torso, that's related to all sorts of things that are going on in your life. And I think quite often people can be quick to say, oh, this should be healed in X amount of time. And I think more often than not, it's at least double that. Because it's holistic. It's not just one part of you that's got to get itself sorted. It's often multiple parts of you.
And I think the time frame for healing depends on your willingness to explore all three aspects. I see people who are doing everything right physically. They're doing Pilates, they move really well, but the back pain's still hanging there. Usually, they might be under financial stress, or they might be stuck in a relationship or a job they hate. And it's our willingness, I think, to surrender, like you said, to let go of expectations, let go of timeframes, and just commit to belief, I think, is the most important thing. Believing it's possible, but then knowing, having practical tools to help get you there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's not a familiar or comfortable well-taught place to be in our culture. We want results, we want action, we want timelines, and really healing, as you said, doesn't really work like that.
No, and I think the more you that which we resist persists, and I think thinking of pain as a physical aspect only keeps it there, because you only try physical measures to ease it. The amount of people having microdiscectomies and still having pain 12 months later is quite high. And to me, that's just fixing the structure, which may or may not be the source of the pain, and hoping. It's, like crossing your fingers and hoping for an outcome. And, look, there's time and places where that is certainly indicated, but I think there's a lot that can be done before we end up slicing and dicing people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's think about now. I mean, you're feeling fit and strong and free in your body, I can imagine. What would be your 3 tips for someone where you were?
I think from a mental point of view, just viewing the pain as an opportunity to learn and to grow, not labeling it as a negative experience as such.
Now, wow, it's so funny you say that, because Kay, in the first episode, that was her top tip: don't label it. Don't label it. That's great.
And then, definitely don't be discouraged by how long it might take. It could take months, it could take years. That it has its own timeline. And also the trust that you will come out the other side, and on the other side it might look very different from what you expected, but it might look even better. And I could definitely say that my physical well-being is probably the best it's ever been, having come out the other side.
Oh, that kind of makes me emotional, because I think, we always focus on what we've lost, but to think that what you gain could be superior and uplift you and bring you more joy than what you originally were attached to is a lovely idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when I am down in Narrabeen swimming, I think, wow, if I was still on a yoga mat, huffing and puffing away in my studio, I wouldn't be experiencing the crashing of the waves and the different seasons within the ocean and the great people that I get to swim with.
And isn't it funny that, it probably took a back injury to get you there? I love this idea that that's where your soul knew that was where you were going to thrive and experience life on a whole new level. And in a way, it took maybe a back issue to make you shift. And I like the idea of thinking that the pain is always for us. It's not happening to us, it's happening for us. And being open to reframing it in that way is easier said than done. I get that. But it's so nice listening to someone from your perspective.
Yeah, and I relate to what you're saying as well about sort of being almost forced into a different situation because you wouldn't choose it. Why would you give up? It was my career as well as my hobby if I didn't know that there was something even better on the other side.
Yeah, and let's get back to being a mum with kids because we haven't addressed this issue before. Certainly, we know the effects of relaxin, can last in the system for up to 12 to 18 months post-pregnancy, and they do make you more mobile. As a yogi, were you aware of that?
Yeah, I was aware of that. And when I did go and do the retreat in Bali with my teacher, who is a mother as well, she talked me through a lot of different sort of strengthening exercises that she found useful after she had children. But at that point, it was a bit too late. I kind of needed that information 18 months ago, just after I had my first child.
Okay, yeah. And I guess it's a really good thing for mums listening to know that despite the physical changes in your body, you can, with appropriate movement, and finding something you love, you can find a way back to a fit, strong, healthy, productive, energized body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think making that a priority as a mum as well is really important, that it's pretty easy to let that kind of slip, particularly if you're not someone who, perhaps enjoys exercise or moving much. For me, it was always something I just had to do, but for other people, it's not something that's got such a strong pull. But I can definitely say that the benefits of being healthy and fit and strong are fabulous, not just for me, but, to be able to run around and play with two small children and have energy to do that is really positive.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like the Tony Robbins idea. The quality of your life comes back to the quality of the energy you have to be able to put into these relationships and these decisions.
Yeah.
And I think any injury, we must remember how we approach it is what we are modeling to our children. So there's opportunity even in that for us to demonstrate what healing's about, and having those conversations with our kids that healing requires movement. It requires noticing our emotions. It requires noticing the thoughts in our head attached to the injury. Those conversations can never start too early. And I think kids particularly almost know these things organically. And, when you hear a child talk about an injury, they have a natural knowing that it will get better.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
sad that as adults, we struggle with that idea a lot because of perhaps the misinformed advice from health professionals or GPs or whoever's path we cross and we seek guidance. Sometimes the prognosis is a little bit pessimistic. Did you have any experiences like that?
I think the most difficult thing with going to see or seek advice about the back pain was the unholistic approach, and that there wasn't a heap of understanding about, that sort of was able to diagnose this is what we think it is. But I think I also got to a point where even though physically I knew that there was nothing there anymore, there was still the pain, like you sort of were talking about with people going in and having surgery. And I think it took me a long time then to finally accept that the pain was then purely a mental thing, that simply my brain and my body was still locked in this cycle of pain, even though there was physically nothing there anymore.
And that's a hard one to grasp, isn't it? That the pain can be wired into your neurology long after the actual tissue damage or trauma is there. And different techniques are required when it sort of gets to that stage. But again, it's still possible with the right techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it takes a fairly skilled set of hands and a skilled mind to have those tools available.
Well, I think people action them when they actually believe they might work. I think if it's all a bit intellectually and they don't actually believe that whatever you're suggesting is going to work, they kind of don't fully commit. And, I think sometimes the nice thing about persistent back pain is that it forces you to go deeper. If you really want to be out of it, you actually have to do the inner work, you have to do the mental work, and you have to learn how to move a bit better. And, it's like anything in life that won't shift easily. We have to dig deeper and develop more skills. And in that way, it's always for our own benefit.
Yeah. And I think the strength that you gain through digging that deep is such a gift, really.
It is a gift that helped you swim 20 kilometres.
Yeah.
Oh my. All right, so let's start to finish up. I want now, just in your own words, what does a bulletproof back look like, feel like? What words come to mind for you when you hear that term?
So I think it's a back that feels incredibly safe and secure. So a back that doesn't feel like it's going to suddenly collapse on you if you do something sudden or something different. And a back that will allow you to do whatever you want to do, a back that allows you freedom.
Love it. What a great definition. I love it. All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's a really inspiring one, and I think it's one of hope because, like you said, without your back pain incident or issue, you wouldn't have found the sport that now feeds your soul. And I really love that idea. And I'd challenge anyone listening in pain right now to maybe close their eyes and spend a minute just considering how the pain you're in right now might be leading you down a new path. And have trust, maybe try surrendering and allowing yourself to be drawn into a new direction if that's what you feel is where it's leading you. But at the end of the day, only you know, and it's your journey, and we're just here to try and give you some ideas. So thanks, Louisa. Do you have any final words?
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Marion, and has even consolidated a few of my ideas about what happened and why it happened as we've been talking along.
Oh, fabulous. I think it's really interesting to have these chats, isn't it? Because we never see people once they leave. Once they're all better and they're out the door, as a practitioner, we lose part of the story. And I'm really loving having these chats with people because it gives a whole new meaning to me about what people go through when they're in it. And as a practitioner, we get that 30, 40 minutes with you, and then you're out the door. So this is a really nice, I guess, final chapter. But you've got so much more ahead of you. And again, I just thank you so much for being prepared to share your story.
Great. Thanks so much, Marion.
No worries. We shall chat again soon, Louisa.
For sure.
Thanks, everyone, for listening, and stay tuned for episode 4.
Thanks for listening to Building Bulletproof Backs. To learn more about Marion's unique 8-week Building a Bulletproof Back online course, visit the link in the show notes. You will receive a step-by-step system providing mental, physical and emotional strategies for smashing your back pain to the curb. Ain't nothing like this anywhere else on the market. Become your own hero.